is the Two Marketeers Podcast, where hosts and marketing experts Sean Patrick and Lindsay Waugh seek to uncover what makes brands so powerful in how they impact modern society and culture.
Two Marketeers. They've got a podcast. The Two Marketeers Podcast.
Morning.
Money, 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 money.
We are diving in.
Good morning.
Money. Lindsay, you're so money and you don't even know it.
Thanks. Is that good?
Yeah. Oh, do you not know the reference?
What's the reference?
No, it's just the best scene of any movie of all time. Google it. Swingers, you're so money and you don't even know it. That is so money.
I do remember saying that at some point. You're so money too, Sean.
Thanks.
So our talk today is all about money.
God, I hate money.
Really?
Yeah. Remember years ago, I wanted to write a book that was just called I Hate Money, How to Succeed Even When You Hate Money.
Why do you hate money? Let's get into it.
Money is so relative to everybody's experience, beliefs, right? I always kind of think it's so funny how we all follow an economy when all of us have a different attachment or connection to it.
Yes.
But it's something I've had to deal with for longer than most creatives, I think, by mere virtue of the fact that I had a quick rise, right place, right time. And before I was 30, I was, responsible for budgeting in a world where budgets didn't exist 2 years before, hence digital. It wasn't even called digital back then. It didn't really have a name. So I'm an accidental expert, I guess I would say, as it relates to pricing specifically creative. Of course, that touches broadly on freelance agency models. I think the agency model is kind of has been the foundation for me of looking at how does big business work in different ways and how can I apply that to my own business as a freelancer or as a small, we were a small agency that hired a lot of freelancers, had full-timers. We've gone through it all. So something came up from Tim Williams. If you've never heard this podcast or me before, it is a bit of a dead horse.
Sean fangirls Tim Williams so hard.
Right?
Loves him. And you can see why.
And I think it's been a long love relationship. There's a particular moment in my career where I knew I was struggling. I thought business had changed in a way that's like there's no room for creativity to make money.
What do you mean? Why do you say that?
I went from a business model I didn't even know because I didn't have to. I worked at great agencies that were like, it's all about the people and the talent. And everyone around us supported us and knew that we, had something special. The business wasn't something we should worry about.
So do you think that it was like when you more transitioned into leadership that you started to realize more the impact of pricing and the business model and all of those things? Or do you think there was a shift that actually took place around creative having to prove its value and its return to the business? Like, what do you think? Would you think it was a combination of like your trajectory and your role?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Yes, there was a physical shift, right? Like I had gone very high up on the agency side in a new area. So, never even had a dream of being a creative director. I was a designer and I wanted to be an art director. And one day I wanted to work at a really cool studio. And if I could make that my living and pay the bills and have a family, then I was like golden.
Golden, yeah.
There was this new thing called digital, kind of equivalent to what AI is today, although we all think nothing like this has happened before. But it was very similar where, someone who came out of school, we learned on computers, but our world was print-based. It was about, 3-week deadlines because it has to go to a printer and then it has to go to here and then it has to go to the client. It was a very controlled environment to what became a Wild West. And I remember feeling at the time like creativity had a very strong place at that time.
Yeah.
We need creative people who know how this shit works.
And you can like hold it. Like when you print something, it's like, I can feel the physical value of this. And then
There
like
it
the
is.
shift to digital is like,
What am I paying
I
for?
can't feel the physical value of a website.
Right?
Yeah. How hard can it be? What am I paying for?
Oh, I can't believe you just said that.
I know it's a trigger.
You knew. How hard could it be? You want me to kill you?
I know it's a trigger.
So
And
anyways,
yet I'm on the other side of a screen, so good luck coming at me.
But when I went to a company, it was a corporation. I went, client side. So my budgets were driven by internally. You thought internally, and it helped me appreciate that, seeing that everything is about $1 and everything is about getting more for less. It was a real wake-up call. So
right.
even at that time, though, it's all about pricing. I played the game. I'm like, yeah, we've got to reduce prices. I was my own worst enemy because I was putting more pressure on my team to be better, faster, and unfortunately cheaper.
Yeah.
And also my job became running a business.
Right.
And I got paid to do something I never even wanted to do, which was run a business, sit at those tables, talk about budgets, figure out forecasts, how we're going to win business. And I was in that kind of situation. I wasn't at a bad company. It was just a different model. So I didn't know what was wrong. I think I just was like, drag yourself out of bed every day and work harder.
Plus, I think it's a common problem, like as you move up into leadership. You stop doing as much of what you love to do, which for you in that time would have been the creative. And now you're responsible for delivering part of the business. And you're like, that's something I never wanted to do. I never wanted to be in that leadership role, in that business mindset, but you kind of end up there unless you step out of it, which I feel like at some point is what we both did.
Yes. All to say at the end, the kind of aha moment I had was we're at this company and they brought in a consultant to help them understand how they could grow margin and reduce costs.
Yes. I remember you all going into this exercise, and I was not at the level where I was invited into this exercise. And then everyone coming out and being like, Tim Williams. And I was like, who, like, what are we doing now? What? It was like, we're changing the way we do everything. I'm like, are we? I don't even know. Like, get everyone up to speed,
Yeah.
But I remember it taking place.
You talked to the 6 people in that room of 50 that thought that way, where the other ones were like,
yeah.
No. What it explained to me in that session was the difference between cost plus pricing and value pricing. And the aha moment was, as Tim would put it, inputs. I'm not paying for inputs like in a cost plus commodity model like labor, where it's like people's hours, product, all the sort of resources that are required to then say, you need to understand what your costs are, and then you mark it up. And success for your business is moving that markup percentage 1 or 2 in a year when you're a multi-million-dollar company. And it's a very effective model, not for creativity. I mean, not for a lot, but
not for like people, So not for creative people. So here's where the disconnect I'm hearing you say now, which is that you're in the model. You're told to track your time, how many hours you spend, and your value is being based on how much you work, like how much physical time you put in. But the business is shifting to perceived value. So it's like the business is trying to sell perceived value, but you're being charged out as a commodity, like hourly based, and they're not. But how dare you think of yourself as perceived value, as the value you bring to the table versus the hours you spend. So it's like a disconnect between business philosophy and the human philosophy.
You're right. And then there's value based on the output and the impact that output has on whatever it's trying to do. And in our case, it's always business, right? So it's like the perfect example would be something like if there's like a moment where it's like, we got 6 hours to figure out this problem, right? And you get the right thinkers in the room, the right kind of combination of experts and thinkers with the right combination of experience to really look at this objectively And be creative, which is think of a way of doing all the things we do in a way that it's never been done before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if in 6 hours we solve a problem that could solve a business $1 million because it's some kind of creative campaign, whatever it is.
Yeah. We're not charging you $1,000 for
Right?
6 hours of time. Yeah.
So there's the hourly rate, there's the value based, and then they actually, like, to me, it's like hourly. I can make hourly work, but I make hourly work based on a value based kind of thinking. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like
how many hours it should take based on delivering that output.
Yeah. If shit goes wrong, those 6 hours could be 12 hours. Because anything could go wrong. We could be 6 hours in and go like, this is not working. You know what I mean? I think that's what we love about the whole process is it's just about collecting information and getting the right minds together to kind of pull little nuggets that kind of say, wait a minute, this is different, right? This is interesting.
Yeah.
This is practical. This is crazy yet logical at the same time.
And sometimes it's 6 hours and sometimes it's 40 hours. And you don't know.
Yeah.
It's like you said, it's the value of the output that determines the price.
Yes. And Tim has worked a lot, like we're friends. Mr. Williams has spent decades working with specifically marketing and creative agencies to help them understand how you elevate value, because that value is talent. It is not a commodity. It cannot be measured on an hourly basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many different models, and I found this really cool blog post that wasn't very long, and I think it's a month old, which I thought was interesting. And I Googled when your pricing doesn't work, or when your price isn't working. And of course, it's very specific to freelancers, but I like to think that, like, whatever position you're in, you need to understand business is just a way of making money. And, if that's a salary, use the same thinking. How much of my time is worth this much of a salary? And the title of the blog post is When Value-Based Pricing Doesn't Work and What to Do About It.
Ooh.
Okay, so 5 situations where value-based pricing doesn't work. When your market lacks pricing maturity.
Okay, expand.
So basically, when you're always at the kind of forefront of something,
okay,
there's no standard, like, I want to buy a car, it's going to be $40,000. I want someone to come and paint my house, that's going to be X amount of dollars. So the market...
So when you're setting the price for the first time.
Yeah, sticker shock, right?
Yeah, okay, got it.
In industries where customers are used to fixed pricing or hourly rates, shifting them to a value-based model can be an uphill battle.
Yeah, one I'm happy to fight, but let's go.
Number 2, when the value is hard to measure.
So value is also can be kind of subjective, right? Like depending on the deliverable.
Hence the problem.
Yeah. Okay, noted.
Value-based pricing works best when the work's results are clear, measurable, and directly tied to financial impact.
I would agree. But tricky. I agree, but that's tricky. Yes.
These are truths, right? To say, look, you try this is when it won't work.
Well, that goes back to our last conversation around measurement, right?
Yep. Sales
if
marketing.
You want the value to be proven, then you have to be able to measure it. So joint effort. Okay, go ahead. What's next?
When clients don't trust the process yet, in brackets.
So again, like they've just not been through it enough and maturity situation.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 interesting things around process in creative jobs and selling value, in that you have to be able to so clearly articulate and sell your process. Like you are responsible for convincing people that the process is what you need to do to get there.
Yeah.
And then also, people also like to buy not only a process they believe in, but something they believe to be uniquely yours, which will then get it to a very unique deliverable or output.
Yeah.
So 2 things to consider around process if you're responsible for selling process.
And as a freelancer, you often are.
You have to be better at selling it than anyone else. You have to like bring the process, which is not a creative thing typically, to life in a very creative and dynamic way so that people want in on the process.
Yes. And 4th, when your pricing is off market. You can't do it in a bubble.
Yeah.
If you are pricing out of market, you're out of the market. You're not going to attract anyone if there's no one out there who pays that much for what you do.
Yeah, because it's kind of one or two things. If your pricing is off market, then it doesn't just mean you have to reduce your pricing. Like, it doesn't just mean you have to sell it for whatever they expect to pay for it. I think in that situation, it's even more critical that you're able to articulate your value, because if the pricing is, the market hasn't matured yet, like you said, or if the pricing is just off market, that doesn't mean that you're just like, well, I'll do it for half. It's like, no, in order to be able to get the value that I'm communicating to you that I can deliver, I have to be able to communicate how my expertise or experience or whatever it is, those factors that tie into like higher brand equity, you have to be able to communicate those effectively.
Yes.
And finally,
when the scope is unpredictable, right? How long is a piece of string?
Oh.
How hard could it be?
So unpredictable scope is the first thing that will kill a value-based project. I also think it's our responsibility to so clearly define the scope and what it is that we will deliver. And actually, I think that comes with a lot of experience. Like, every time I do a scope, which is all the time, I feel like I'm adding different things or taking out things or thinking about things differently, because if you're junior in your job and you're trying to map out a detailed scope, you just don't know what you don't know. So it's hard for the scope to be predictable, if that makes sense.
It does, because you learn, you experience, you practice, you craft. And, you know, I have a question for you. Compare now to, say, even when you first went freelance or when you were doing budgets at the last company you did budgets that you had to win.
Yeah.
How does it work now versus you on your own, years of experience? Do you hear, you have the brief, and do numbers pop in your head? Or is it like, I have no idea, I'm going to go through the process and I'll let you know?
When someone's talking to me, I know exactly within range what it's going to be. Like,
exactly.
Oftentimes in that situation, I'm actually telling them what they're looking for. So they are communicating to me the problem, not necessarily the deliverable they're looking for. So I already know what it's going to cost.
Okay.
And I know what the market will handle. And I know the additional value levers that I pull as a person with my experience. So I think I know very clearly a range in the beginning, and then it's a detailed exercise to get to the actual price for that person. But I didn't know 5 years ago, even though I had worked at agencies for 15 years prior to that, 5 years ago, I didn't know. And it was honestly an iterative experience, like, to get to very clear pricing strategy. And the only way I could get to where I am today is to have gone through that.
Yeah.
But I wonder, and I'm going to ask you this question, I know very well when clients think I'm overcharging, because we have that conversation, but I don't know very well anymore when I'm leaving money on the table, if other people in my situation are charging double. So do you feel like you are now or ever undercharging and you just don't know it? Like, when you're overcharging because people tell you that, but do you know when you're undercharging? Or like, do you care? Do you care if you undercharge anymore? So that's what I get from you, is that
it's not worth it.
It's not that you don't know, it's that you don't care. You are so clear on your value and comfortable in the pricing model you've designed for your life.
Yes.
That if you were undercharging, you don't care. Whereas I'm still in this like build mode.
Yeah. And
probably a cost heavy time in my life because of the kid, like all the things,
Yeah.
So I do still care.
As you should.
I care a lot.
Absolutely. As you should. Welcome to your 40s. I absolutely know where you're coming from. It doesn't mean I don't struggle. As you said it, Lindsay, is just breaking down how you said you go about it. And it's like, you have a price in your head in 5 minutes. So do I, right? It's just occupational hazard. It's like, this is 10 grand and they probably have two. Like, do they even know? So instead of wasting your time about trying to find out what that number is yet, it's the interaction. It's the exchange of value and the fact that you willingly give them information to inform them whether they should hire you or not. There's a real value exchange there.
So what you're talking about with this conversation around, like, I know how much I'm going to charge, but it's a conversation and we're connecting and I'm talking them through it. And that's building a bond. It's building trust. It's communication. It's clarity and transparency. And these things, I believe, are emotional levers that can help you deliver a higher pricing strategy, because there's brand equity pieces that are playing into this project. You know, it's not just like, okay, he's going to charge the least amount. You're like, I like this guy. I trust him. He's smart. He has 30, how many years of experience, whatever the case may be. You know, he knows that he's going to get the job done. And if I'm talking to someone else who's going to charge me $2,000 less that I don't trust, now I'm more than willing to pay a little bit more to work with this person. And that's the impact of equity on a brand, which is yours, and pricing. Absolutely.
What I want, whether I get the work or not, is that they have shown their appreciation for my knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
That feeds my ego. Because as soon as I'm not appreciated, I don't appreciate it. I'm a very sensitive person.
Well, value exchange goes both ways.
You're interviewing them.
Exactly. We are interviewing you as much as you're interviewing us. You know, like I would agree that it's when you're doing something for yourself, you have to be able to get your own value extraction out of it that makes you feel it's worthwhile. Otherwise, why are you doing it? And it can't just be money.
Pricing is so important.
Mm-hmm.
And when that pricing applies to you, the human, there's so many different ways out there. Just make them work. But just try and avoid the cost plus model and look at your North Star being value-based. You're always looking at what it is you have to give and what that is worth to the people who need it most.
Yeah, great takeaway. Thanks, Sean. This is a really important topic, so I'm happy we could bring it to people today.
Thanks for your questions, Lindsay, and your insight and your experience. Have a great week.
Thanks, Marketeers. Thanks for listening.
Bye, Marketeers.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Two Marketeers Podcast. New episodes launch every 2 weeks.
Find the Two Marketeers Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you like to listen. And be sure to rate and subscribe.
Listen on our website, thetwomarketeers.ca, or you can ask Alexa to play the Two Marketeers Podcast.
Want to keep in touch? Follow the Two Marketeers on LinkedIn or at Two Marketeers on TikTok. We've always got something to share.
This podcast is over.